Everybody, Ryan Grant here and welcome back to the YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm basically going to be going over 5 mistakes that beginners make that keeps them skinny, and if you avoid them, you will most certainly make progression, right? I haven't got much to say, so without further ado, let's get into mistake number 1 that you need to avoid and basically how to avoid it, right? So the first mistake that a lot of beginners make is that they rush into things, right? Obviously, when we start to do something new, whether that's play tennis, golf, chess, learn French, etc., etc., we get that initial excitement and we get that initial spike in motivation, which you cannot let delude you, right? Because what happens a lot of the time is this spike in motivation deludes a beginner to thinking that they're invincible, which basically means that they think they can, for example, stick to a really intense training routine straight away, start to eat in a calorie surplus every day, hit 200 grams of protein every day on day one. However, that is not how it works, because you will inevitably just go 1 step forward and 3 steps back, which is not what we want to do. And we want to go 1 step forward and keep doing that, right? So instead of rushing straight into a quote unquote super routine and doing what your favorite influencer says online, what you actually need to do is what they did when they started. And what that is building the foundations, right? Slowly training yourself up, not just physically, but mentally up, to be able to sustain the super routine over the long run. However, we just need to build our foundational layer. And a really good example I like to use is that if builders don't build the foundation below a house, then the house will collapse. And if you don't know what I mean, in order for a house to stay stable and upright and just not fall over, there has to be a foundational layer of like wooden structure underneath it, right? And if the builders just want their paycheck and they just want to rush straight into building a house, so they don't build this foundation, then what they're going to find is that the house is going to collapse, meaning that once the house has collapsed, they're going to have to pick up all the bricks and take care of the mess that they made, which is going to put them further back from the place they started, right? And then they're just going to have to start again and then build the foundation and then have a second attempt at building a house. And it applies to the gym. The same concept applies, right? If you don't build your foundation, so what I mean by this is not necessarily focusing on intensity, but just focusing on staying consistent with your routine, actually doing the things that you enjoy, focusing on the technique and how exercises work before moving on to the weight, and as I said, consistency, then you are going to get so much further in the long run, right? So that is number 1. If you rush into things, you will stay skinny and you will stay in the exact same position you are. So it's all about building your foundation. So with the training, right? Learning the technique, learning the basic training principles. So learning how exercises work. How does the muscle feel when I'm performing an exercise, right? Asking someone whether I'm performing the exercise right or not. For example, with bicep curls, right? Not going heavy, but just getting used to the movement, right? Slowly curling up. Just notice how the bicep feels. Stuff like that. That is going to get you so much further in the long term. And in terms of diet, not rushing into a super diet with 3,500 calories or 200 grams of protein, but just slowly increasing the protein, slowly increasing the amount of calories you have every day, and slowly just getting into a routine of when you eat your meals, right? So your body can just start to recognize the patterns. Therefore, it's going to be easy to eat meals as you go, right? So that is mistake number 1 that people make. Do not rush and make sure you build your foundations, right? So mistake number 2 that a lot of beginners make is that they neglect rest and recovery. And I cannot express the importance of allowing your body and your mind to have rest days and recovery days, right? And let me present this to you with the phone battery analogy, right? So obviously, as we know, every phone, if you're watching this on a phone, your phone has a percentage, right? When it's at its highest, we have 100% battery, right? And then when we use our phone throughout the day, the battery gets lower and lower as a consequence, right? And then we may get a warning at some point in the day saying that our phone is at 20% or 10% or 5% or even like 1%, right? I don't know if you get a notification for that. But then that basically just tells us we need to charge our phone, right? However, if we don't give our phone time to charge and we just keep using it, then our phone is inevitably going to burn out, and in other words, die, right? Therefore, we're not going to be able to use it for a while, and we need to wait probably 5-10 minutes before it turns back on in the first place. However, if we let our phone rest and charge without using it, then we would have got back up to 100% no problem, and we would have been able to use our phone for a lot longer. However, because we neglected the fact that it needed charging, and because we didn't listen to the phone and read the signs it was telling us at, 20% warning, that happened, right? Our phone died, and now we got to wait even longer for it to turn back on. And this concept applies with the gym and rest and recovery, right? Working your muscles and giving your muscles recovery time is the exact same concept as giving its phone the charge time it needs, right? When we're in the gym, we basically break down the fibers inside the muscle because we're working them so hard, right? Therefore, that means that they're going to be sore and that they're going to be at a low battery percentage. Therefore, we need to give it time to recharge, right? So, for example, if we work biceps, we need to give it some time to rest, to recharge, right? To get back up to 100%. However, if we don't give our bicep time to get back up to 100% and we just go straight into other gym sessions, not only are we risking injury, our sessions aren't going to be as efficient, but we're not going to let our bicep grow, right? If you don't let your phone charge, it's never going to get up to 100%. It's like if you don't let your bicep charge or recharge, right? It's not going to grow back bigger and stronger because you haven't given it the opportunity to, right? And when you rest and recover, that is actually when your muscles grow, right? You do the work in the gym, and then the growth happens when you rest and recover, right? So neglecting your rest and recovery is a huge mistake that beginners make, and you cannot be making this mistake. So in order to avoid it, make sure that you're getting at least, at the very, very minimum, 2 days of rest every single week. And I would actually highly recommend you have 3 days of rest from the gym every single week, just to give your body that downtime, right? And you may be asking me right now, but if I only train biceps once a week, then it's got all the other 6 days. Yeah, that's completely true. You may be given one muscle group like 6 days to rest. However, your CNS, your central nervous system, is your entire body, and it is worked every single time that you train. Therefore, you need to give it time to recover, and that is why we have rest days, right? So, yeah, making sure you're resting, making sure you're getting good sleep, so 7 to 9 hours every night, making sure you're going to bed at the same time, optimizing your body clock and regulating it, making sure you're staying hydrated, giving yourself enough protein every day, and that is going to help you avoid this pivotal mistake that a lot of beginners make, right? So that is mistake number 2 out of 5. Now moving on to mistake number 3, lifting for ego and not muscle. And I really wish that I learned this lesson earlier, and I really, really hope that my experience and my words of wisdom are going to get across to you, and you can actually understand what I'm saying. So a lot of the time, right, the huge misconception that's amongst beginners when they start, and it was amongst me as well, is that the stronger you are and the more weight you lift, the more muscle you're going to grow. And as much as that is true, because when you increase the resistance you put on your muscles, they have no choice but to grow back bigger and stronger. It's not necessarily all about that, because if you're lifting heavy but you're not performing the exercise correctly and actually stimulating your muscle properly, then what is the point in going heavy, right? You've got to think about it like this. The muscle doesn't know whether you're lifting 200 kilos or 60 kilos, right? The only thing that it knows is whether it's being stimulated properly and worked intensely enough, right? And as I just said, the muscle doesn't know what weight it's using, so going heavy and lifting for your ego is not what you want to be doing, right? The most important thing is that you're performing the exercise correctly, which is inevitably going to help you increase mind-muscle connection, increase tension on the muscle. Therefore, your muscle is going to be able to go under a process of muscular hypertrophy, which is basically the muscle growth process, more efficiently, right? So making sure you're not lifting for ego and you're lifting for muscle growth. So not breaking form when the exercise gets painful. So when you're on leg extensions and it gets really painful, you may be tempted to use momentum or go faster and not control the weight. However, doesn't matter, mate. You've got to learn to love the pain, and you've got to learn to put yourself through the pain. So not breaking form is something that is really, really important for muscle growth. Also, another thing as well, not letting your ego get to you in the sense of lifting heavy weight, right? You may be lifting a lighter weight than someone over there. However, how effective are they being for muscle growth? Right? What is their form looking like? Do they look stupid? They probably do, right? You don't want to be ego lifting, you want to be lifting for muscle growth. So making sure you're performing the exercise correctly, properly squeezing a muscle, going slow and controlled, and that is what is going to help you grow muscle and keep your ego at a minimum, right? And that is what we want to do. We don't want to let our ego get big, because ultimately ego is the enemy if we let it get in the way of what we're doing and when we're trying to grow, right? So that is tip number 3 out of 5. Do not lift for your ego, lift for muscle growth. So it's not all about the heavy weight. It's more so whether you're actually being efficient and performing the exercises correctly or not. So as a beginner, the number one priority, as I said at the beginning, focus on technique. Focus on how the muscle feels when you perform the exercise. That is the most important thing that is going to help you in the long run. So now onto the penultimate mistake that beginners make that you need to avoid if you don't want to stay skinny, and that is program hopping, right? We are in a, I would argue, probably a golden age for bodybuilding and the fitness industry, because there's so much information out there, there's so many people giving advice, which is absolutely fantastic. However, this can also be a curse in disguise, because one guy that's got a really good reputation could be saying one thing's best for muscle growth, however another guy could be saying that another thing is best for muscle growth, or in this case one program is best and then this guy's saying another program is best. And what happens is people become sheeps. They become a sheep in the herd, and they keep swapping their programs and they keep swapping what they're doing because someone is telling them that, oh, this is the best exercise of 2025, right? However, that is not the way to do things, and that is not how you're going to grow muscle, and that is how you'll stay skinny. And let me tell you why. So imagine it like you were trying to learn hobbies, right? If you wanted to learn Spanish this week, but then you got bored and wanted to learn Japanese next week, and then you wanted to learn Italian the next week, and then you wanted to learn French next week, and you kept swapping hobbies, what do you think is going to happen? You're not going to get good at any of them because you haven't allowed yourself enough time. And it's the exact same thing with program hopping. If you keep switching programs and switching exercises every week, then you're simply not going to allow yourself enough time to progress on them, get good at the exercises, and progress. And you're just going to stay skinny if you keep doing this, right? And it's like trying to switch business models every week. You need to give a business model years for it to work, let alone weeks, right? So you've just got to stay consistent. And one more thing as well, as I said in a previous point, the muscle doesn't know what weight you're using, and it also doesn't know what exercise you're doing, right? So there's no best exercise, there is no best workout program. The workout program just provides the structure, and the exercises, it's all down to what works for you, right? And I'll get into that in other videos, but just don't follow the crowd. Do what you want to do the exercises you enjoy. Someone in this day and age may say bench press isn't optimal. I say fuck them if you enjoy it, right? So now moving on to the final mistake that that beginners make. So number 5 out of 5. And this is not necessarily to do with training or diet, but this is more to do with mindset, right? So not acting in accordance to the person you want to become. So this is more of a mentality thing, right? So a lot of the time, when 99% of beginners quit and they don't achieve the physique and they don't achieve the progress they want to, the main reason why is because they don't act in accordance with that person that they want to become, right? So what I want you to do right now is shut your eyes, right? Shut your eyes and imagine what you want to be looking like in 6 months, a year, or just imagine your dream physique, your ideal self, your peak self, right? Just imagine him, right? Just imagine him right now, ripped, shredded to bits, big biceps, big chest, all of that good stuff, right? Or whatever your dream self is in terms of the physical side of things, right? What you want to do in order to become him is start to act in accordance with that person. So, for example, you just want to think, what would he do in this situation, right? When you start to maybe, for example, feel resistance to going to the gym and doing a leg day because you may not necessarily like leg days, just think about what this version of yourself would do. He would fucking go and smash a leg day, whether he feels like it or not, because he knows he's got to get the work done, right? So if you start to act in accordance with your ideal self, so just think, what would he do in this situation? You're going to be so much better off in terms of consistency, therefore you're going to start to learn more, you're going to get better at the craft, therefore you're going to start to make more progress, and inevitably you are going to become this person because you started to do things and act in accordance with what he would do, right? And I sort of learnt this lesson from pretty early on, but I didn't necessarily learn this lesson in words. But when my parents were younger, a lot of one thing that I always heard them say is, "What would this guy do?" And you know, it's one specific person they knew, but they also they all. But a lot of the time, they always just refer to this guy, and they're like, "Oh, what would he do in this situation?" And that basically just helped them, you know, do whatever they needed to do, right? So there are 5 mistakes that you need to avoid. So the first one is rushing into things. So in order to avoid that, just build your foundations. Number 2, neglecting rest and recovery. Make sure you're getting your recovery days in. Number 3, lifting for ego and not muscle. You know, get your priorities right. Number 4, program hopping. Don't follow the crowd. Don't be a sheep. Do your own thing. Number 5, not acting in accordance with your ideal self. So think, what would he do in this situation? So that is the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I really appreciate your time. If this video has helped you and you do want more help from me beyond these YouTube videos, then I actually have a free community that is going to be the top link in the description, where I'm basically coaching the guys in there for free, and more specifically, men who struggle with weight and muscle gain, and helping them break free from those struggles through teaching them the fundamentals that helped me gain 27 kilos from this to this in the space of 4 years. And if you want to avoid more mistakes just like these, then I will be helping you, and it'll be a pleasure to have you as the newest member in there, right? So if you just want to stay on the YouTube channel, that's completely fine by me. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed, drop a comment as well, and stay around if you want. Drop a subscription. I upload every Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Thank you very much. Now I've got a lot of editing to do because I've filmed quite a lot of videos today. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.